Aquarian Music Witch, the podcast.
And making
I know,
little decisions.
My coworker, like, she's like just baffled by it. She's like, I cannot believe you eat the same thing every day. Can't believe it. Can't believe it. And it's like, to me, like, you know, I can't believe you have the ability to think of 4 different meals to eat, you know, eat and cook a week. Like, you know, like, because for me, like, looking through all those recipes is like, it's just like, yeah, it's stressful for me. I'm like, screw that. I know this turkey is going to be delicious. You know, I know exactly how to cook. So I'm not wasting my willpower on that stuff. I'm just going to, and I don't want to be weird about it, but I can't tell you enough how delicious this turkey
I'm glad
is.
you found it. And there is something to, like, it makes me think of like safe foods. And also a spectrum thing is that, like, people will get really fixated on foods, and I definitely do this, where I'll get it in my I want to say in my mouth. Now that you point out this, like, difference between the mouth and the stomach kind of hungry, and that's what it is. Like, there's like a sense in my mouth, like, you know what I want to eat right now. And sometimes it'll become the same meal for several days in a row or something, or for over a week or something. Like, different foods. Like, I had this thing where I started mixing chia seeds with almond milk, put it in the fridge for like an hour until it becomes kind of like a pudding, and then add Nutella to it. And that became my, like, thing that I would eat at the end of every day for like 3 months. Or I told you, like, I got really into Halo Top one time. I just eat it all the time. And then I get over it. But it's like these phases where I'm like, this is my food. This is all I want to eat, to the exclusion of absolutely everything else, until one day when I'm just done with it and it's the next thing. And you can't predict how you're going to feel about that kind of thing, but
but if as much as possible, if those things are something that are not too high in calorie, it you know, and that's, I think it's a lot of people, it can go one way or the other. You know, you could just jump in and just, you know, do the meal planning and do, if that's your brain style and that works for you. Like, that's the way I am. You know, I'm a planner, so I like to plan. I wrote the plan. I'm doing the plan. And so that's my way. But if that, you know, but then I in our group, you know, there were very many different styles. And so some people, we were just celebrating every little better decision, that, you know, this was a better decision than that. And all of those can add up. You know, next thing you know, all of a sudden you're doing, you know, you're making, you know, you're eating chia seeds and almond milk rather than, you know, whatever, a half-gallon ice cream or whatever. So, you know, it can be also a gradual, eventual little thing, but it's a commitment to it too. You know, you can't come and go with that. You know, you can do it in your own style, but you have to be, you know, a little bit self-honest that if I really want this, I really have to do. Nothing changes if nothing changes, right? So what am I gonna change in order to, and what am I willing to change, and even pushing yourself past what I'm really not willing to do this, but after you do it a little bit, you're like, okay, we say we come to see ourselves. I come to see myself as someone who could do that.
Yeah, it's a certain, you know, the bottom line is, like, it does matter, like, how bad do I want this? Because some people are like, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me at all how much I weigh, and, like, they are perfectly happy, and that's fine. Like, but if you're, like, for me, it was just kind of like a search for happiness. Like, okay, I'm doing I'm eating the food that I want to eat all the time, and, like, I'm still not happy, so I have to try something else. And, like, I totally agree. Like, when I think, like, when you're hungry with your mouth, like, like, all of the best textured foods are just, like, so bad, you know, pretty much so bad for you. Like, whatever, you can't, like, a chip, you can't replicate. When you replicate that in nature, it's like bacon or chicken skin or, you know, fish skin, like, fried in oil, you know, so then it becomes this, like, super fatty. So, like, those, you know, when you think, for me, like, thinking with my mouth, I would never be able, or being hungry with
decision.
like, never be able to do that, because, like, the textures that I want are, like, a freshly baked cookie and, you know, Cheez-Its, like, that stuff doesn't exist in nature, unfortunately.
Yeah, that was really a big part in the beginning for me, figuring out I didn't even know when I was hungry. I'm being very, very honest, like, no, I'm hungry. and I really felt hungry. I really felt hungry, and I really was hungry because I guess it's like a psychological trigger or whatever. When I'm struggling with something, I really thought I was hungry. And for me, the process of eating the right foods, the right amount of foods in the right amount of time, you know, timed apart, gave me a sense of, you think you're hungry right now, but go get busy. You know, get out of the kitchen, go get busy, distract yourself from this food right now. And people say, well, wait 5 minutes. Waiting 5 minutes didn't work for me because the whole 5 minutes, I was like, yeah, well, I think I'm still hungry. I think, you know, so we finished, go get busy in a half hour. And you see, and I found, you know, once I got busy, I forgot about the food, and an hour could pass, and then the stomach hunger would come back. But it was a whole education for myself that was fascinating to me to find out, to be able to differentiate what was stomach hunger and what was mouth hunger.
So that's where I think calorie, like understanding the relationship between like calories and weight loss, and like that's where I think it's super important, because if you're like wishy-washy on that, or you don't fully understand that, then you'll, like I said, your reptile brain will talk yourself into eating every time. Like, you know, you will pretty much end up eating unless you have phenomenal willpower, like at least in my opinion, where when you understand, like, okay, this is not stomach hunger. Like, I've already had the appropriate amount of calories for this time of the day. Like, I don't actually need that snack. I'm just busy. Right. I'm bored, or I'm tired, or I'm stressed out. Yeah. Right. Like you have to, you know, I think, and then making the decision to not do it. That's when the bright lines come in, where it's like one of your bright lines is, this is my calorie count for the day. And like, can I get away with this? No. Okay, I'm not gonna, you know, bright line. And understanding that, like, it's gonna be, you know, it's gonna be okay. Like, so I always want people like, oh, I'm just so hungry, like I just have to eat. I have to eat. Like, trust me, you don't. Yeah. Like, your body is an incredible machine that is gonna get its energy one way or another. And like, different people will do it differently. For me, fasting works. Like, for me, fasting is the best way to do it. Like, there was a time during the pandemic where I was working like the preload shift at UPS, like 4 a.m. to 9 a.m., like loading the trucks. So it was like
physical,
crazy physical. Like, I was drenched in sweat, like 2 hours into the shift. Like, you know, I'd load 1,000 packages a day. It's running back and forth from these cages. Like, and I would wake up and I wouldn't eat. And then I would like get home. And this is when I was like, you know, I was like 50 plus pounds heavier than I am right now, and like was completely inactive, like no exercise for like years before this, just super unhealthy. And then I just started doing this job, and I was like, all right, you know, it's not the best paying job, and it's at a warehouse from 4 to 9 a.m. Like, I gotta get, you know, pandemic, so I wasn't finding other work, and I was like, I gotta get through this somehow. So I was like, all right, it's exercise. I'm going to use this opportunity to like lose some weight. And that's when I decided to like consciously fast. And like the first couple of days, I was like, oh, I'm so hungry. I have no energy, whatever. But then like my body got used to it. It clicked. And I was able to like get through that super intense shift, go home, you know, take a nap, do whatever I needed to do, and then eat just dinner. Then I'd eat a big dinner, wake up the next morning at 4 a.m., you know, do the whole thing. And like, you know, and I swear, like, I noticed, okay, so I did that for months and months and months, and I lost a ton of weight. And then I got pretty damn skinny. And I remember, like, okay, now I'm starting to feel, like, the effects of real hunger and real, like, lack of energy. So I started having to, like, eat a banana on the way to work, and then bring a granola bar and eat that, like, halfway through my shift. And then add in another meal right when because I didn't have, like, those reserves anymore. So my body, like, really sincerely needed that energy, and I could feel it. And but whereas, like, you know, before I started that job and the fasting, like, I would just eat because I thought because it was time to eat, or I felt like eating. It had nothing to do with my need for like fuel. I know. And I agree, my brother John feels it. Like, I don't want to be that guy who's like, food is fuel. Like, nah, like, I don't feel that way either. Like, right, part of the reason the turkey and broccoli works is because I put a ton of salt on that broccoli and roast it until it's chips, and you know, like.
That's the best when you brown any vegetable that turns brown.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like, you know, like when I want to treat myself now, it's like I'll add an extra like half tablespoon of olive oil, so it gets, you know, that little extra bit of olive oil. That's the
Rounds
best. Yeah, right. So, but like that is enough to like get me through it, and like I really, really love that stuff. I'm eating for the fuel, but then I also get like that satisfaction of like, damn, that was a delicious meal, because like that still matters no matter what.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to just the Michael Scott, you don't want to just eat gruel all day. Like, you want to have good, you want to eat good.
Yeah, because you can't maintain that. But it is like a compulsion. And I was thinking too of like one strategy that worked really well for me was that I do have these things where I'm like, I want to eat just this food. And so before I would just eat that food and continue to eat it throughout the day until it's like a ridiculous amount of calories you've eaten of it. And then I realized that I started to think consciously, like, you can have that tomorrow. And then you get 2 dopamine rushes. Like you can, and the fasting kind of also worked for me for some reason. I never really talked to a doctor or officially tried to do that, but I just started eating like 1 meal a day. And for some reason, you do get like reoriented until that feels good in your body. And that worked really well for me. But that idea of like, I do want more of this food, but I've hit my calorie limit and there's no reason why I can't have just more of this food tomorrow was like such a helpful realization.
Yes, right? I know, but it's a willingness to, analyze what are my choices here. You have choices, and when we feel like we don't have choices, it's really hard. But okay, do I have a choice, and what could a different decision be about it?
I also think it's you're doing you would want to eat more of that food to feel good in one way or another. But like for me, it's like when I really eat, when I'm most tempted to eat, when it's the most satisfying to me is like at night. When I'm tired, when I'm just like watching TV in my living room, like having cookies there is the best time to have it, right? But like I'm like, I know having those cookies will make me feel okay, make me feel satisfied for the 20 minutes that I'm eating them. Then I'm gonna go to bed and wake up tomorrow and be like, feel it, just feel myself be like lethargic and slow because I ate that. My stomach doesn't feel right.
You feel it. You're bloated. Your face is kind of oily or whatever.
Right. So like, if I can just make it to bed, and resist the temptation, the satisfaction that I'm gonna have with myself, the feeling that you have when you like wake up that next morning
and
of just like,
you didn't do it.
you're like, you really, and that's what I was saying before about like, you have to have the appropriate appreciation for the little things because it's so damn hard. So like when you wake up that next morning, like, I like bask in the glory of having not snacked the night before. It's like, hell yeah. And then like my workout's better and and like then you string together a couple days of that, a couple weeks of that, and then it becomes old. And it's like, well, how am I going to get my dopamine? And that's where I find myself. That's where I find myself right now. Like, struggling to maintain. So in 2 years, we'll follow a podcast. Like, how have you navigated the struggle that is?
And I think a lot of people have that trouble at night in the evening. Like they feel like
you're out of your spins, you're out of your willpower, and you're just kind of like, I have nothing left for today. Can't even think. Yeah. And also, I keep going back to that interview. It's a very fascinating interview. I'll link it at the bottom of the episode or whatever. But she talks about oh no, I lost my train of thought.
Wait, what were you saying?
I blanked. It's okay. What did she bring?
Oh, that being tired at night and your willpower, you run out of spoons, and where are you gonna?
Well, never mind me.
Yeah, but it is the nighttime. When we think we jump back in, but the nighttime is really, really hard, and I had to reframe what that was. Like I felt like going to bed was so boring. Like, I don't want to go to bed yet. So that means the end of my fun is over. But then I started having this new adventure about going to bed. Like so many great, and to me in my world, a lot of great things happen. Like you're close to universe at that point. The night's quiet, and what vibe can you get into there? And I would have great dreams, and in my whatever perspective, there were visits from my guides, and I was getting support at night. So I didn't just think about going to bed, going to sleep. I thought like, what adventure is going to happen to me tonight? Who's going to which of my guardian angels are going to come and spend time with me, or whatever kooky ideas I would have about going to bed. I had to reframe that, and that helped me to not feel like the evening was my time to indulge in some.
Yeah, it's like it is. Staying up and stuff is definitely trying to reclaim your free time. Like that's what a lot of people like. Yeah, and I found myself doing that for sure. But then I started like going to the gym, which is free time in the morning, which is like a weird thing for me. But I started going to the gym and like finding myself enjoying doing that. And then at night, instead of being like, all right, you know, like I really don't want to go to work tomorrow or whatever, like I just want to have some time to myself. I was like, well, I gotta, you know, I really want to have a good day at the gym tomorrow. And what's gonna enable me to have a good day at the gym tomorrow? You know, it's going to bed. It's get climbing into bed at 9 o'clock. Like, okay, that's not the most fun thing, and it's been difficult for my to maintain a social life and get in bed at 9 o'clock. But it was just what, you know, that's what was gonna make me
You
the
want that more
happiest the
than
next
anything.
day. Yeah. So
And it's okay to
gave
like,
me
do
a
that
reason.
and then find balance later too. Like maybe you just have to
Yeah.
do that for a while. And
Oh,
it's,
for
that's
sure.
what I was gonna say is there's like
Yeah.
she talks about a shift from that initial phase into the maintenance phase. And that I think that's important to understand those things as two different phases.
Yes.
For sure, like, you know.
Yeah, so you're not gonna be doing that
Well,
grinding all. You know.
Yeah, like if it's like, you know, for me, like I'm 29 years old and like live in New York City, so like maintaining a social life involves like going out and drinking, and like I do enjoy that, but in order to like establish a lifestyle, which is really what it is, you know, it's not just like, okay, I'm gonna lose this weight and then I'm done, and then it's so, you know, and then I've
back to
lost the
the
weight,
weight.
right? Like you have to establish it as a lifestyle if you want to, you know, have any kind of long-term success.
Yeah.
And
A lot of people lose weight and then gain it back within 2 years or something. Whatever
Yeah.
the statistic
Yeah.
is, like a lot of people.
oh, I've done that, yeah, like 3 times. And like that's where it's like if I'm like going out and doing my normal social thing during the initial period of establishing the lifestyle, like it will never be established because I'm creating too many barriers. I'm waking up hungover, like I have less energy.
Mhm.
You know, you just don't feel as good, whatever, like, you know, and then you just, it's one of those things where you like miss enough days and you give yourself a pass enough times, and then you're just like, whatever.
Yeah, go
you
back
know?
to your old
Right.
stuff. Yeah.
Where I was more regimented about it, it's like, all right, now I already have this like body of work, you know, I'm like a year plus into it. It would be such a shame to throw all this work away. But until you have that kind of like backing and foundation, it's you know, I think it's important to, if you have the opportunity, it's important to make it a priority. And when you prioritize, that means you kind of gotta put some other things aside. But I mean, it is, I do think it's worthwhile.
Aquarian Music Witch, the podcast, is made possible by listeners like you. To support this project, you can contribute directly through our Ko-fi page at ko-fi.com/aquarianmusicwitch, or consider subscribing to our Supercast page. With the AMW Supercast Content Access Pass, you'll gain access to a vault of exclusive content and other cosmic perks starting at just $5 a month. Now, back to the show.
Yeah, and then it does get slippery. You know, it gets slippery after a while or through the whole thing. And I think the difference for me this time is when it got slippery, like you kind of saying before, okay, tomorrow's another day. Or, you know, the difference, for me, the big difference was, one of the big differences was how I thought about my slips. You know, I didn't think like, oh, you blew it, just go. You know, I was just like, okay, you know, that wasn't getting you where you want to go. And Keith calls it 100% day. You know, it's like tomorrow you can have 100% day. You know, for me, 100% day was, you know, the way I do it is I write my food the night before and that's what I eat the next day. And you know, when I was in the middle of a slip, I was like, no, I don't think and just do the one day. And then I did the one day, and then I saw myself like that I could do that, and then I could, you know, I crawled back out of the hole again, you know, and I don't know because I'm, you know, like a year into it or whatever, but you know, I'm hoping less and less that I feel like I'm, not that I'm gonna have less slips or anything, but that I feel like I have to crawl out of the hole again. Like it's just, you know, you could have a little, just keep moving, you know, and just don't keep doing that. If you don't keep doing that, it's not going to compound. It's not going to get worse.
Yeah,
So,
it's like you're like when it's still fresh, when you're still new, like falling into those, you know, slipping up is really just like falling into old routines and old habits.
Right,
so it's like,
you
know, it's just like, I don't know. I kind of think of it as like, if you're going like down a ski slope and like falling into that old habit, it's just protected, or like, you know, it's just protected by like that little
Orange
orange
lines.
rope.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can just eat, like, it's very easy to break through that. But as time goes on, like, that path starts to become more and more obstructed, and you don't fall as far down it, and so it's not as
Or
much
your
of
leg
like,
muscles to climb out or stronger.
Yeah.
After a while,
Yeah.
after you do
Yeah.
it.
That's a very good
I
analogy. It's true.
I've found it that
It's
like
true.
like right, the hole's not as deep and it's easier to climb out of. Like, it doesn't, in the past it would take me like days and weeks to like really get back on track, and now it's like, okay, I fall off, and then after like the first 2 days at the gym, I would say are easier. It's easier to get back, and then it doesn't take 2 weeks. It takes 2 days. It takes 3 days, and then I feel like, oh,
And I'm just so
fully
glad to be
back.
back. Yes, I could do it again. I felt when I got back again, I was like,
Yeah.
oh God, thank God.
It's kind of the feeling. Yeah, the feeling is just like, like for me, I always felt like there was something like magical that I captured, and now I'm going to the gym. And I'm just on the now I'm on the path, and it's like perfect. Just stay, and then you fall off, and it's like, I lost that magic. Like, it's over, it's done, and I would just collapse and fall fully
That's
down.
fair.
Into,
It's kind of black and white thinking though, right? Which is
Yeah.
a trap for a lot. Like, and I fall into it too. But it's really something where like you have to be kind of comfortable with the balance and an existence of more than one kind of way of being,
yeah,
and not sit there and shame yourself and self-sabotage and just be like, well, sometimes that's me, sometimes I'm going to do different
Right.
things,
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a really good point.
my
yeah.
dad's like, his division or whatever there, he says it, and it's such a great motto. Their motto is progress, not perfection. So like,
good is the enemy of perfect.
Yeah.
I keep saying,
Yeah.
that's
or
like
perfect is the enemy of good.
Right,
You
it's
know.
that's why I'm trying to
Good is
like,
enemy.
that's the mindset.
That one, yeah.
That's the mindset that I'm trying to like employ, where because it was always before, like, there was so much like, like identity wrapped up in it too, where it's like, yeah, I'm this person who, I go to the gym and I eat healthy and I do the right thing all the time, and then you don't do that, and you go to the gym and you feel like an imposter, and it's like, right, like, that's not the case. Like, you can slip up, just get there the next day, and it doesn't, whatever.
I guess that's why it's so critical. Like, it's an identity crisis.
It's
all
an
of a sudden.
identity thing, and it's now and now it's about unpacking all that shadow work and the trauma.
Yeah.
Because that's all what it is. Like, your whole ego is constructed out of your trauma or whatever. And yeah, it's
Great.
and then all that shame gets tied up in it when you're not aligning with who you think you're supposed to be or something.
Yes. Yeah. And judgment, and like self-talk is bad.
But that's right. That's where like the that kind of like sense of community and accountability to someone else like mattered, because when you're not, like, I don't know, you need something to grab onto, and like the same things aren't going to always work, right? So sometimes it's just like for the love of the game, and you're just like in a groove, and you like want to wake up in the morning and eat healthy. For me, like, and eat healthy and go to the gym.
Well, if you can gamify it, that's a very powerful thing too. Yeah.
Live the right lifestyle. But then other times, like, it's not so easy to do that, and you have to like force yourself to do it. And sometimes what enables you to get up and do it is like, okay, I look in the mirror and I like what I see, when I wake up in the morning. So it's like, all right, let's just get to the gym today. Or your like workouts have been really good, so even though you don't want to get there, like afterwards you feel great. Or it's the accountability of, I have this meeting on Tuesday, and everyone, I've purported myself as this person who does this. I have to just have to do it, and whatever the reason is, like, however shallow and whatever, like, if it's making you happy, like, I don't know.
If it helps push it. Well, that's not with my cleaning of my house too. It's like, it's not a burden to clean my house because anyone's coming over. It's like, thank God someone's coming over, because now I have to show my house off, and that means I live in a clean space. I would live in a sty if I didn't
We have no cave to see it.
have any accountability, have any community of people. And community is such an important part of that. Like, not just for accountability, but just for support, emotional support, or whatever. Or like,
And you can find it in a lot of ways.
going through a similar thing. We've had similar, like, I'm validated that there's other people that have shared similar struggles.
Yeah, I found like, if I did like fall off the wagon, like, the release of being honest about it in a, to like other people, and then like, it's like, oh, they didn't like laugh at me,
Throw you
and
You're not done.
rotten
You're not going to jail.
tomatoes, right? And then like that feels good, and it's like, okay, now I can, for me, like that, okay, it's fully out, and everything's okay, and I can still, do my thing, and like,
And
That was
sometimes
so
finding
good.
community is hard. Like some we don't have people who might support us that way. So, I went through a lot of times where I had to do it on my own. And for me, I think what that community was books. I know
Mm.
I would just find like books that spoke to me about where I
Yeah.
was, like if I want to deal with my shame or, and I would just read book after those, whatever, personal development. I like call it self-help. I don't know, just personal development feels more
Mm-hmm.
productive and forward. So, I like to read a lot of personal development books when I'm in that phase because that felt community. That was like whoever that author was, I felt like I had,
Yeah.
like I would go to bed at night, like that would help me get through the evening rather than, binging on something. I would just go with my friend, my book, who was speaking the words I needed to hear, and I would hear good stuff, and I got that through the book. And yeah, so and if you you know think in some ways for Amazon, you can go there and find what issue am I working on,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, and read the reviews. Yes, yes, that's the kind of thing I want to hear about, and get that support. Yeah,
That's great. I love thinking. And probably also the rest of the readership. There's a community or like a
yes,
feeling of. Although it'd be
right.
interesting to try to. I don't know that I've ever like made contact with other people that read the same book outside of like maybe Harry Potter, but no, but that's an interesting way to think about it, like a community where that's almost like
Yeah,
it's displaced in time, but it's almost like a relationship that you have to the author. Yeah.
it's true. Yeah, I'm just reading the reviews, mate. Yes, that's how I felt about it.
Yeah.
Like those are
Even
my
reviews.
friends.
That's a
Yeah,
good point. Yeah. There it is.
yeah, and if you do post the link, Bright Lighting does have a whole Facebook, a great amount of
Yeah.
community
Do you
there,
want
and
to
you can
talk
pick and choose it.
more about that? Like, is it a pro? Because it sounded like she's very educated. She's got like neuroscience
Yeah.
background. And then is it like a company or like is it like a program? Like what does it look like to kind of be
Yeah,
involving yourself in that?
yeah, what's great about it is you could do it at whatever level is comfortable for you. People that have different needs, and she's really mindful of that. And so she has a book, Bright Line Eating. You could just read the book, right? And some people
Okay.
don't, really not so thrilled about interacting with other people. And so you could read the book. She has what she calls like a boot camp. I did it in one her. I think she has boot camp 2.0 now. I did her first boot camp, but it was like a 8-9 week program, 10 week. I think it was like a 10 week program, and you had a lot of support. And she gives you the handouts, which is the food plan. The food plan, to me was very very helpful. It is a little bit. It is pretty structured. She is really really encouraging structured eating, which it was we all, fight against that because nobody wants that.
But it was also that's also is it or is it not specifically a solution for people with addictive personalities?
I would say yes. Mostly, I would say she has a food addiction scale, and it'll be on that link as well. And so you take the scale, you take the quiz, and you find out if food addiction is your issue, and then it is really more geared for people who identify that way. But I think a lot of people don't want to identify that way. They'll say, "I'm not a food addict," but maybe you take this quiz, well, maybe I should think about that, because no one wants to. Well, most of us don't want to, go there, and so if it, but like we were saying before, once you identify the problem and you have a word for it or you understand it,
Yeah.
you're much more likely to fix it. Because if you deny it, there's no hope there.
Yeah.
So so you can do the boot camp, you do the book. She has Facebook groups, and then she has like advanced learning. Once you finish the boot camp, you can sign up for all kinds of maintenance courses, and I didn't go that. I've been thinking lately. I heard someone talk about psychology of maintenance. I'm like, I don't know what that course is, but I feel like I need it because there's a lot of issues going beyond that. And yeah, it's good stuff. And so we're just dealing with the reasons we eat, and I have like I don't know where I heard it. I wish I should remember give credit where credit's due, but I heard once that my body is not going to take the hit from my mind anymore.
Mm.
Yeah, my body took the hit from my mind a lot. I was having a bad day, shove something. That's really my body. Really putting food in my mouth is really my body taking the hit from my mind. And I had to say that's just not fair to your body. That's not fair. Your body didn't do anything to you. So stop doing that to it, and deal with your mind, in a mind way, and not in a a physical way. And to really be willing to deal with what was going on, and that helped me to
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Because you put so much on your body, and even without realizing it, like even just trauma that then lives in your body
Yes.
because you're not dealing with it emotionally. Or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, it's
And
true.
meanwhile, your body's an actual temple, you know, an actual divine, vessel of you that you only have one of.
Yes, and we just can't, and especially when we're not happy with it, we really disconnect from it, and we really, for me, I beat it up and abuse it. And,
My brother said like one time to me like a couple of years ago, and it just always stuck with me. He's like, your skin cells are dying, and like your body is like constantly rebuilding itself. You're constantly replacing cells.
Every 7 years or whatever, your whole new set of skin cells.
Yeah, so like you literally are what you eat, and like as your body is like replenishing, itself and refueling and rebuilding, like if you're just eating junk food and processed food and you don't incorporate vegetables, you don't have like, the right nutrients, the quality, the build quality of your next iteration and whatever is not going to be as good. And like, just think about that over years and decades and how it impacts your organs and all that stuff. Like, so that's something that's really kept me like on it, like, the value of vegetables. I never, like whatever, before I wanted to be healthy, when I was living on my own, I was just like, whatever, I don't care if I don't eat vegetables. And then, like it didn't happen immediately, but then I was just feeling terrible, and you start eating vegetables again. It's like, like my brain is clear. I'm thinking more clearly.
Yeah.
Like, I have more energy and excitement, and it's just because I ate like broccoli yesterday.
It's been proven, it's scientifically proven,
Yeah,
It's
so
not just you,
right, like you are what you eat, and if you're just eating all of this stuff, like it gives you that dopamine rush, but it doesn't do anything else for your body. It does all, and even that dopamine rush, then it leads to the crash, and then and now your brain chemicals are all out of whack, and it's like, well, the only way, honestly, it's not the only way to get back there. It's the only, eating more sugar or whatever isn't the only way to get back there. It's just the fastest way to get back there, right? The fastest way to replenish it is to just eat a brownie, right? It takes like, for me, it took like 2 weeks of eating healthy and going to the gym. And I was eating healthy for months before I started going to the gym.
Yeah.
But it took like 2 weeks to really start feeling like, oh shit, like I am feeling myself here, like I'm like, right? It took 2 weeks, and that's a long.
The patience, after a couple of days, I don't know, this isn't working.
Yeah,
I don't think it's working. Well, let me just have this.
Honestly, like I say 2 weeks. You say 2 weeks, and it's like, oh, it's 2 weeks. Like, who cares? 2 weeks, whatever. When you're living it, and you're like 2 weeks, 14 days, 10 days at the gym, 6 days at the gym, whatever it is, like that's a lot of days. And I feel like people discredit that. Oh, how long? How are you even working out? Oh, a couple months. Like, that's great. Consistently for a couple months, like that's a lot of effort.
People get like a 24-hour pin when they have gone 24 hours without their addictive substance or whatever, and that's because that's worth celebrating.
It is.
You know what I mean? Even just the day, even just making through the cycle of one day, and resisting that kind of end of day temptation when every day so far in your life you have not. That is an accomplishment. Yeah. And even if it is one day.
And sugar and flour has been shown to be as addictive as cocaine. So making it through a day without your substance, and if that substance is a donut, it is equally hard to make it through the day without that donut as it is for, somebody who's addicted to legitimate drugs.
Yeah.
And again, the Susan Pierce Thompson video, which is just, the way she explains it just makes so much sense. It's just the refined essence that gives your brain this crazy, and like conceptualizing that and understanding that allowed, we were talking about being kind to yourself. Understanding like the true difficulty of it, like
that it is addictive, because you don't think of a donut as an addiction as bad as a drug. And then she also talks about how you can't not eat, but you can not eat certain things, and so it's one of the hardest things to kick because you're around people that are like, well, you gotta eat, why don't you just have a donut? It's Thanksgiving or whatever.
Yeah, that's just I know pressure. Yeah, you go to someone's house, they cooked it for you,
or your neighbors bring some cookies to welcome you to the neighborhood or whatever.
Right. Yeah. It's and like it is cultural, and I mean, that's why you have to make it a priority, because, right, you can plan your food all you want, but, like, life happens, and then,
And how do you deal with that when things come up?
Yeah.
You have to have, for us, it's about having these kinds of, like, this kind of backing to fall for me. It's like, okay, why do I not want to do this? Because I want to feel good tomorrow. You
Right.
know, like I know it's gonna
Gotta
make me
have a higher
happy
reason.
now, but yeah, right. It
What
can't
is
just
your higher reason?
right.
Yeah, so I think sometimes like my body is an antenna, like literally it's an antenna because it's all energy, right? We're all about energy and frequency, and so if my antenna is like literally, an antenna gets rusty or beat up, it's just not gonna receive as well. So when I think of my body as an antenna, I need to keep it as clean as possible. Eating clean food will allow me to be more receptive to what the things I want to be receptive to, and able to stand in my energy in a really healthy way. So
What does clean look like to you? What do you mean when you say clean food?
yeah, actually Keith made me coin that word. He didn't coin that word, but he brought it into our group, and we adopted it as an important concept.
Okay.
That they're eating Louise Hay, who I love, Louise Hay House. She had said that she would like to eat only what she could grow in her garden. And that was, I mean, that's an extreme whatever. I mean, wouldn't that be really something?
Yeah, not everyone can, but
Yeah,
you can.
right. Yeah, exactly. So some version of that where it's some food that your grandmother would recognize. It's not like what?
Like the processed is a big part of that, right? So I have no backing on like the science of processed food, but your take is that that processed food is just generally going to be less healthy for you than unprocessed food. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. There was just an article in the Wall Street Journal this weekend, and it talked about, that you can have a food issue based on heavily processed foods, right? And they found that they are injecting those foods with more addictive substances. So, that whole thing can really, unfortunately, that's how they make their money, right? The more addictive, the more we need another bag of that of their product, the better off they are, and they're making their money out of it. For to eat clean is to eat as close to it comes in nature. Fruits, vegetables. I do eat meat. I don't whatever. Dairy, things like that. But Keith.
I mean, for me, like that's why I love that I've found this, ground turkey recipe, because then I can just shop around the outside of the grocery store, right? I remember hearing that.
I've heard that as a piece of advice from experts too, like personal trainer people, to talk about walking around the edge of the grocery store instead of going into the middle to find like quote unquote healthier foods.
The bulk of your like in my experience, the bulk of my food comes from the outside of the grocery store. It's the produce aisle, it's the butcher,
Dairy,
right,
seafood,
the deli, cold cuts. And then I'll go into the center to grab the black beans and quinoa and hot sauce. Yeah, right. But it's not like I'm trying to find like the base of my meal. Yeah. And it's great because I know everything that went into that, the preparation, like I took all the ingredients and then I turned it into this meal. So, there's no like hidden little MSG or hidden little kind of, artificial flavoring, preservative, like, I know I made everything from scratch. And it's just
you
like
can't go cold turkey to that cleaning. Just try and make more and more clean decisions. I can replace this for that. That's just as good. Blueberries are just as good as whatever.
It was also like this morning we woke up and I was like, I asked you, I was like, should I have like I got these gluten-free bagels. And then we were talking about it, and I just kind of was like, actually, I think it's going to be tastier to have potatoes instead.
Right.
Which is a great replacement, but it's nice to have a conscious thought. And again, like I'm all about harm reduction, so I think purity is kind of a dangerous idea. Like this constant drive to be perfect and pure and clean in a complete 100% set. Like that's very sabotaging, actually, and it's not realistic, and it's not like how anything works, I think. So it's fine to like strive for that, but it's not fine to like constantly punish yourself because you're falling short of perfection.
Yeah. What can you sustain is really what you're trying to.
But so harm reduction is just like you make a choice that's like a little bit better and a little bit better. Like maybe I struggle to brush my teeth every day, and so maybe for a while I'll just get those little disposable one-off and at least that's something. It's not perfect. It's not a total fix, but it's at least like a bridge to get up to a next step.
Yeah, and you get rolling in that direction, and you see yourself as someone who can do those things, and you're heading in the positive direction. I know one of the little things I do is I don't like water. I don't drink water. I didn't drink water. And early in the group, I said, I just can't. I don't know. I don't enjoy sipping water. It just doesn't taste good. And Keith's like, well, just gulp it down. Like, all right, maybe, but I'm not a gulper. I'm never one of those chug-a-lug people. I can't chug. So, I don't know exactly how I came to Keith's suggestion mine, but in the morning now I do 32 ounces of water before 10 o'clock. That's my goal. And I don't drink much water during. I would love to be one of those people who's always walking around with their water bottle, and
I also struggle with that so much. I'm like, I know I don't drink nearly enough water, but I just don't. And for me, like a harm reduction which you might not work for you.
Yeah.
But a harm reduction for me might be like getting those Neo things where you flavor the water a little bit, and now I have kind of like a juice, but it's like a 0 calorie whatever, and it's water at least.
I put a little lemon,
some kind of
drop of
flavoring.
lemons in it.
And maybe that's not the best because it's still like sugar or whatever that aspartame is, but like
lemon juice.
better than drinking no water, and then maybe later I can make another choice to go off that and just drink the water once I'm more used to it.
So when I did the UPS weight loss thing, I love sugary drinks, like freaking Canada Dry. I would say I'm in like the top from the years of 2016 to 2021 through 2020, I should say. I was probably in the top 1% of Canada Dry ginger ale drinkers. I had as much Canada Dry ginger ale as anybody on the planet, and like love it. Still love soda, cream soda. Best drink.
Oh, cream soda.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when I did the UPS thing, like I found myself like really like, well, actually, honestly, it actually happened first. I found the Crystal Light first, and I remember being like, so this is a substitute now for ginger ale. So I just like, got like big packets of it, mixed a huge pitcher of it, and would just drink a ton of that. But it is 0 calorie, and like, they found like those diet things, like they're not actually that bad for you. Like they're not definitely bad for you, and like there's some evidence that they're not actually bad for you.
I guess there's people fighting both sides.
Yeah.
There's people fighting both sides, and I'm also like a Diet Pepsi person, which again is harm reduction. At least I'm not drinking.
Look, it is
Pepsi.
Still, it's still however many calories, and at the end of the day, it's calories in, calories out. And like I was replacing the 230 calorie ginger ale with this Crystal Light, and it's 0 calories, and I freaking loved it. And then I like whatever, that's how it started. And then I started like being more conscious and like drinking water during work. And I actually so first I found the Crystal Light I was more hydrated than when I was drinking soda. It's like, oh wow, like this feels much better. And then even when I switched from straight water, and then I felt more hydrated. And like hydration is like so underrated. Like people, what's funny? I saw this tweet, and so I don't know how true it is, but they showed a picture of this guy, and like he was 38 in this movie. It was a guy in like a James Bond movie. He looked like shit. He looked like a 55-year-old or whatever. And then they're like, yeah, this kind of like correlate, old. I don't know, if you look at pictures of like 35-year-olds from the 1970s, they look a lot older than like 35-year-olds do today.
I agree. I think millennials are looking younger than any generation before us.
So
we're in our 30s looking 20.
So they said that a lot of that is like there was a push, like a lot of the reason that like people nowadays don't look so is because like people started pushing hydration, and like bottled water became more popular, and like we understood the benefits of drinking more water. So like I don't know, it kind of makes sense. Makes sense. Sure. And even if it's not true, like keep that in your head. It'll motivate you to drink more water. Like I promise, if you like make the conscious effort to drink more water, if you're somebody who like doesn't, you will definitely feel a difference. Like then like now like you were talking about how it's hard to recognize hunger. Like I had a hard time like recognizing thirst, and now I know like I'm just feeling a little bit foggy or tired or whatever, and I'm like, it's because I'm thirsty. I never thought that way back in the day.
Dehydrated.
That was just the way my brain was all the time. Like it was always a little bit, and now it's like, no, I'm just thirsty, and
I've also had some success, especially later in the day when you get these zaps of like, I want some food. I don't do it every time, but I'm more likely to be like, well, let me take a sip of water first and see what that does for me. Because sometimes it kind of fixes the problem.
Yeah.
And you don't expect it to, and sometimes it doesn't, and then you're like, okay, I'm actually hungry or whatever. But
good point. They do say, a lot of time you think you're hungry, but you're really thirsty. You've seen that.
Yeah, I'm like always like I think I'm hungry, but I'm just tired.
Yeah.
or bored.
It's hard to identify those feelings unless you practice it and have the awareness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's, it also is like such an easy way to be less bored is to like eat food.
Yeah.
Like that one, those two feelings are so,
Boredom and
just
hunger.
like having something to snack on.
Because it's a dopamine thing again, right? It's just like a fix for your kind of craving.
Hell yeah,
dopamine.
yeah, hell yeah, Eminem. Hell
I
yeah.
know, and we talk like food when you're bored, or you're depressed,
Mhm.
or you're unhappy, or what those feelings are. Like food can never scratch that. It can't. It just can't, because food is food, and food. Its intention is to satisfy hunger or fuel or
Yeah.
nutrition, and that's its purpose, right? So,
But your emptiness is coming from somewhere else than your
Right.
physical stomach. Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
it's just like a
Yeah.
mosquito bite. Like you eat the food, you itch the mosquito bite, then it's like, all right, nice. And then 5 minutes later, well, that shit's itchy again. And like, you're not solving the problem.
Yeah.
You're just kicking the can down the road.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Right,
You
I
got a
won't-
food, now you got a weight issue or whatever.
and
because
then
you
right
food.
for me, it's like, yeah. Then I did something, I did something that I know is not good for me, and like I bought, in my core is like I didn't actually want to do that. So now I had this pre-existing feeling that forced me to eat,
Yeah.
compounded with the feeling of guilt for having eaten, having fallen victim to the temptation, and it's just like, yeah, it's
And then
crazy.
you have extra weight put
But
on.
like your brain, your reptile brain doesn't see it that way. Your reptile brain is still like, that was sick. Thank God we had that sugar. Like, so that's why it's just this crazy battle that you like.
Yeah, which you
find
always say you're
yourself
gonna
in.
pay for it on the front end, or you're gonna pay for it on the back end.
So, right, you make the effort to fight the battle on the front end and don't eat it, or you wake up the next day feeling like, what did I do? And then you have to
So you're
like
paying for it there.
fight the battle of like, going to work and going about, like that stuff. For me, at least, is harder because I lost, I didn't do the work the night before. So then I feel crappy the next day, and it's like, oh, I'm paying for it now.
Yeah.
Or even just being aware of that. Like if you just don't even recognize the correlation there, then you can't start to build up that thing of where you're like, okay, that's not what I want to do next time.
Yeah. Well, it's just,
You belong.
right. It's what I was saying before. An object in motion stays in motion. An object at rest stays at rest. And if you're in this, routine, like I was the same way, where it's like the only thing keeping me going is thinking about like the sandwich from Astoria Taco Factory at the end of the day. Like that's
Yeah.
all that was like getting me through the day.
Yeah.
I was like that object at rest, and it's like that's just my.
And that's making food entertainment. And there's an important distinction when you make food entertainment.
Right, when it's the centerpiece, because
when
right.
it's the entertainment, it can be happy, joyful. You can love cooking. There's a whole thing. It is great and everything. But when you make it something it's not, it's gonna be.
It's kind of like, are you going to the movies to watch the movie, or are you going to the movies to eat the popcorn? You never want to be right. If like the food, you're always going to eat the popcorn. Like that's when it's like really not the healthiest relationship with food, because it's the main, it's the main attraction. And look, when it's dinner time, food should be the main attraction.
Yeah.
Like it's dinner time. It's time to eat dinner.
Enjoy.
But when it's like other things, when it's like other things in your life, like, because I remember it would be like, all right, I can't wait to like get home and order like cookies tonight. Who cares what I'm watching? Like, it doesn't matter what's on TV. Like, I'm just
What you're
As
thinking
long
about
as
is the
they-
food
Yeah.
reward.
right. And then
Becomes your friend, yeah.
and then I finish that food, and there's still an hour and a half left in the movie. And it's like, well, I didn't even actually want to watch this, like,
Yeah.
what the heck am I doing here? This is so unsatisfying. It feels like there's so much,
Yeah, so you got to detach and you got to separate those things. And if there's a sign at the pizza parlor, you're not pizza. You can't make everyone happy.
You're not
So
pizza.
yeah.
That's
That's like
so
kind of the
funny.
opposite thinking. But you kind of give it up, like I've given up harder things.
but that's where it's important to like truly appreciate the difficulty of like breaking the addiction and thinking of it that way. Like, because whether or not you consider yourself a food addict, if you're, if you're overeating and feeling bad about doing that, like, you still have to break that relationship. So
Yeah.
when, the first night when you're off of it, like, you're gonna want sugar. Your brain is like, where the hell is this? What the hell is going on? You're still gonna have that, like, lack of happy chemicals the next day. And it's,
Yeah.
you gotta like get at it,
Yeah. Detox.
and if you just think of it as like, well, I just don't, It's just not who I am. I'm not meant to do that. Like, that's your reptile brain tricking you into thinking that it
justifying
needs
it,
this.
yeah.
Like, you don't. I promise you can do it, but you have to, just get out. It's like very similar to the way if, people who are breaking other chemical addictions, they just, they have a horrible few days, like, trying to get through it. And it sucks. And it's such a difficult barrier to entry to, like, a more fulfilling life. But, you have to give it the respect it deserves and grind it out, because it's definitely,
It's also like I
definitely
think it's like a sign of being in survival mode. Like if you can be conscious of that. I think a lot of times when people do take food as like that's the one thing I have to look forward to today. That's because like you're really just operating at a very minimum level of ability.
For sure.
Which you can give yourself. You can lift yourself up out of survival mode by figuring some of this out, but it's like a chicken and egg scenario where it's like, how do you even put the first foot when you really are just in survival mode?
Right. And like that's where I feel like for me, like a little bit of tough love for myself was like super necessary. Like my mom says nothing changes if nothing changes, or like an object at rest. However you want to like frame, like for me it's like, bro, there's ain't no way to do it but to do it. Like, you just gotta do it. There's no stop crying, like don't be like, whatever. I know don't be a bitch about it. Like, just get out there and freaking do it, because if you just, like what, because the other choice is just ruminating about, can I do it or whatever, like, and it's like, or just continually like telling yourself that you can and reinforcing this belief, like, no, I'm not the kind of person. You're always going to believe that until you should prove it to yourself otherwise, And
when you're ready to make that next step, right? So we talked about harm reduction and making a lot of good little choices, and that's definitely better than not. But sometimes, while you're in that process, sometimes you get this spark of, I'm ready to do this. You go with that. Go with that, go with that as long as you can, and go with that. When that's, in 12-step programs, we count days, like 1 day down, 2 days down, 3 days down. And so then you live on that momentum, and it's really going to keep pulling you forward. But I do feel like if you don't capture that spark at some time and take the bull by the horns and go with it, you're just going to have this low-lying whatever, like kind of experience, as opposed to, you throw your hat over the fence, you jump in when you're ready to do that. And that's where you're going to see the benefit, because in seeing the benefit, that helps you to continue. And it's like a slow burn, a slow death when you not making any progress. I'm really trying. You think you're really trying, but and you are really trying to some extent, but you're not getting the benefit of it because you're not really doing the one step beyond that requires.
The effort that you're making is not like, it's what I was saying. It's the effort on the back end where you just like, you're like, I don't know, trying to talk yourself back up after having slipped. It's not, continuing forward. And I agree. That's what I was saying before. Like, I would get that spark and I would continue on the trail. Then I would fall off for like a day or two, or like, and I'd be like, this just isn't for me. And then it's like, I have, had that community to fall back on, a reason to like, whereas if I was just doing it for myself, it's much easier. Like you said, you don't have guests over. It's much easier to let
let things go.
Yeah, exactly. So like having someone else to fall back on was,
This part of the conversation is reminding me a lot of like a parallel to the creative process, and how for people that are like lifers in music or art or whatever, are very familiar with this idea that basically you don't have like a creative inspiration every single day of your life. That's not realistic. Right. So if you're going to really do this as like a career or as just like a life, you take every day and you do a little bit with every day, and you build up like a tool belt. And so even when you're uninspired, you still have your tool belt and you're still adding to your kind of creative body of work or whatever. And then in those moments when you're inspired, suddenly you're inspired, plus you have all your tools. Like you have a massive tool belt and you're like, yes, I can totally climb this mountain today. And those are the moments where you get really great. But if you're inspired in those moments and you don't have a tool belt, you're going to maybe do something, but it's not going to be like what you really could do if you were preparing in all those times when you didn't have the big spark. So I wonder if that's like applicable.
Totally. That's really, really great analogy.
Like if you have no idea, like, I mean, I guess everyone has an idea of what healthy eating is, but if you don't have any idea of how you're going to put that into practice, then you have that big spark and you use this huge chunk of energy just to figure out how you're going to put it into practice. And then you have to like have, you know, just as much energy to actually put it into practice for a long enough period where it bears fruit, you know. So if you can just like do some of that work and figure out like, okay, when I want to eat healthy, this is how I want to do it. I think this is going to work. Then you can like, you know, you at least have a framework, and then you have the motivation to do it, and you can make it further down the path to a point where hopefully.
Yeah, because it is a bit of an effort. Like, what is going to be what is going to be my food program? You know, like having that at the ready when your spark hits.
having
or
things in
like,
place.
yeah, right. So like, yeah, like the tools in this sense would be like identifying like, okay, what is my biggest issue, right? For me, I know it's dessert before bed.
Yeah, no eating after 6.
Yeah, right.
Like a gremlin.
So yeah, pretty
Can't
much,
feed them after 6.
pretty much, you know. And then it's like, okay, so how am I going to, you know, then you got to figure out like, okay, so how am I going to stop that?
Right.
Like,
Yeah,
you
no,
know,
just nope, can't do it. Like, how am I going to? What am I going to do about it?
right.
And
What process can I put in place for when I do have the spoon one day? What's that look like?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think like you know, for me, giving up flour and sugar was hard because they were my friends. They were, they were very.
I mean, sugar's a big one. Like, we're sitting here talking about this, and I'm like, wow, gee, to give up sugar would be interesting. Not me, not today.
Yeah.
But, you know.
And me too. You know, I was, that was almost my identity. It's like, I love junk, you know, oh my God, all of that. I could just, you know, love it. And
Swear, like, it's just you, like, but like, I feel worse, like, just when not even that I've overeaten or like it's, you know, even if it's an appropriate amount, like on a Sunday where I planned it and I dessert, you know, I was perfect, whatever, I just feel worse. Like I just have like less, my brain just like literally like operates differently. And maybe it's, you know, neural pathways that were developed over years of like negative self-talk as a result of.
But you know,
snacking,
it's science, right?
like,
It's scientific, right? It's not your imagination. It's not just your feelings, right? It's a fact that sugar and flour mess.
But it's like hydration. Like, you know, I would never know. I would never know that if I didn't like completely get off of it.
Right.
Chicken and the egg, right? Like, how are you gonna actually stop it when you don't? You know, when like the benefit is not something that you're familiar with. Yeah, you know.
Yeah, but I think about like how I've done harder things, right? Like, you know, harder things, not even that necessarily they've done harder things. I've been through harder things. You know, people have been through great tragedies or whatever, you know, lost people in their life, and you survive that, right? So I could survive that. I could survive life without flour and sugar. You know, it's all relative. You put in perspective, or, you know, like, for my mantra has always been, you know, I have 3 children. I'm never going to hold my babies again. Like, that was the happiest time. I'm never going to hold my babies again. And I'm going to be fine. Like, I'm okay. That's okay. I still can have a happy life. I have a very happy life, even though I thought I would never be happier than those days, you know, and I think I'll never be happier than having my food days. But I realized, no, I'm having a very happy life without, and a happier life without my food days. And so, you know, we can survive a lot more than we think. You know, we make it up to be. We make it in our mind to be something so much more than
that's that's another like major benefit is the when you do it and you know prove to yourself that you can stay off of it and maintain that for any period of time, like, you know, that's like the self-discovery that my mom was talking about before, like being a grateful recovering alcoholic is, you know, that's why you're grateful, because you like find this ability in yourself that you didn't think was there, and it's so worthwhile. So, you know, I think also what you said in the past, Mom, like sometimes like you gotta replace it with something. So if you are like doing that eating a lot, it's like removing yourself from the situations that tempt you, but it's also like having something else to turn to. So that's like doing a puzzle or the crossword or whatever it is, like, you know, just some other little thing to occupy yourself during those. For me, you know, after dinner, like, what am I gonna do before bed? Entertain myself somehow, like, you know, and just finding that thing to replace the food with.
Being the best version of myself. Like, why not? You know, and I maybe this is not true, but I don't know. But I think everyone's best version of themselves is eating healthy, I don't know. I don't know if anyone. So many things I think are like normal thinking. I find out. I don't know. That's a controversial
people have
thought.
such vastly different experiences. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. But I guess I could conceive of, yeah. And then there's a lot of like fat positivity, which I'm behind because I do think there's a very, very real problem with how there's a lot of stigma against people who are fat, and there's a lot of like medical issues with the way that, and she even brought that up in the interview again, but like there's a lot like that to me is a huge reason why we should be removing shame around people based on their body size. There's also obviously a lot of factors like race and class and like different experiences that you have in your life that lead you to be in your body. And so to me, it's like, yes, to completely remove that from like the shame of the social pressure to just kind of force people to lose the weight because they're unsightly or because whatever, like the doctor's going to give them less medical care or something. And so I'm kind of like pro the mannequins that look like Americans or whatever, you know?
Sure.
But yeah, I don't even know where I was going with that. But like, but the fat positivity, that doesn't have to be the same thing as sitting in defeatism about yourself and thinking like I have to just accept that I am not happy and therefore like I now need to force everybody else to accept that same thing. Like it's just
you can do
you can do something that you want to do, and it doesn't have to be I don't think it has to be around shame. You don't have to shame yourself out of being in whatever body you're in.
You love yourself enough to say I could have that, maybe I even could have that.
But I think like, you know, there are people who are just like comfortable in their body at whatever size, and like that's not necessarily like who I think
and health. Like there are real things where some people are in a larger body and their health is fine, and maybe it's not because they are necessarily eating like a huge amount of bad
that's
foods
your body
or whatever.
Shape. That's
like
their body shape.
But like right. This isn't, you know, we are not, or I am not trying to speak to everybody. You know, it's more I'm trying to speak to the people who are like who are unhappy. You know, the people. I'm not saying that because you're overweight you're unhappy. Like not at all.
That's just an important distinction, but also not to just sit in that. Like you don't have to sit in that.
Yeah,
just
if you don't want to, and if you want to, like more power to you. Like that is an incredible amount of self-love that I am envious of. Right? If you don't want to, these are just like, you know, this is just the way that I went about it. Things that helped me through it. You know, some of the rewards that I found of doing it, and my understanding that like the beginning is incredibly difficult, and like you gotta like gear yourself up big time. It's not just like an easy thing that you can one day wake up and willy-nilly decide, well, you know, I'm not gonna have that piece of cake today and that's it, because your reptile brain will not let that happen.
But I think it's really helpful to talk about it and just like share an experience, because it's destigmatizing, because it's really hard. It's also, there's a lot of weird judgment around like even losing weight, because then you do get into spaces where you're like, people are like, oh, don't talk about that. Don't talk. And I mean, I can understand it can be triggering. So like, let's put a warning on the episode or whatever. If you don't want to hear about calorie counting, don't listen to it if that's not going to be helpful, and all that's going to do is trigger you into a worse state where you feel worse and more ashamed of yourself.
I agree.
Don't listen. Don't even be involved. It's not your plate. It's not your like part of your journey that you're on. Yeah. But there shouldn't be a stigma against people just sharing their own experiences and like saying, this is something I wanted, I accomplished it, and here's how. And if somebody else wants to kind of do what I ended up doing, maybe here's one thing to think about. Like there should not be an issue with talking about that.
Yeah. And is it okay to say that maybe if calorie count, you know, like you're saying, the disclaimer on calorie counting triggers you, maybe isn't that maybe possibly worth exploring? Like, why does it trigger?
Oh yeah.
To me, anything that triggers you is now a question of what the heck happened there.
But then it's like right, but then it's like how many spoons do you have, and that's where it's like, you know, you gotta understand.
Are you in full survival mode, or are you ready to unpack some things?
Right. And like for me, for a long time, like I was just not. You know, I was in denial and not ready and unwilling. So like you could have, you know, I could listen to myself from the future talking about it, and bro, like get started now. Like it's gonna be so great. And I would have just been like, absolutely not. Like, you know, you remember what you remember what it was like when you were here. Like how could you say that kind of, you know, like. Yeah. So I totally, you know, it's totally valid to feel that way.
Maslow hierarchy of needs. I feel like maybe I finally got to the point where I was willing to, for my higher self, to do something about this.
You could be on that level to address it, because all the lower levels are taken care of after a certain point.
That's right, and that's why, you know, I've said before, like that's the capstone, and we're incredibly lucky to have fulfilled the other things. so that we're able to worry about like self-actualization.
But there's no
Yes,
shame
I know
in,
that
I mean,
choice.
there should be no shame in privilege. Like, that's something that really gets me, is that people, you should acknowledge,
right.
you should be aware of your privilege, but it shouldn't be
Right.
holding you back from taking advantage of your privilege to do positive things for yourself in the world.
Right, yeah, and to indulge yourself in a self-care program of, you know, really taking care of yourself
Yeah.
and putting in the work.
It's a
you know,
worth thing.
yeah.
You're
Yeah.
worthy of
Yes.
having work for yourself and being happy with yourself and your body. Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
Right. It goes back to the, you being poor doesn't, what does that lady say?
Yeah, it doesn't make you, you're being poor doesn't help poor people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't
Right.
make them feel
Yeah,
like
It's the
this.
same way, like,
Yeah.
and
We've
I
had
think,
a whole conversation about like the 1% in the class thing, but yeah, like you shouldn't just be punishing yourself to death just because you have something you can work with. Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't feel
and
if
if
it's not coming along with you.
Yeah.
like the people, it's always like people who are going through the journey or have been through the journey and lost the weight, whatever, like that I feel like that's always seen as inspiring. So like, yeah, that's all.
Yeah.
That's a weird thing too. I remember losing weight, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, you look so much better." Well, and then you hit the bell curve of now you're looking too skinny. But
right.
you look so much better, and that used to make me so angry with the idea of like
Right. What are you
demand
thinking
avoidance,
for?
where I'm like,
Yeah.
well, don't tell me, like, and now that makes me feel so bad about before, like who I was before just
Right.
needed
Yeah.
a hug, and now I'm
Yeah.
being told that everything I was afraid you thought about me was totally right, and that really, and it sucks
Yes.
also when I then gain weight a little bit because of even medicine or whatever. Maybe I gain weight because I lost my habits, and now I know you think that because you said it.
Yeah.
It's like when your relationship goes sour and all your friends are like, "Fine, like I hated that guy," and you're like, "Why didn't you tell me?"
Yeah, no, you're gonna like right after you gain a little weight, you show up like you're kind of looking like shit right now, to be honest. Like,
That's
you know?
really hard to hear. Sometimes that's
Yeah.
too much to hear. Like that's a really hard thing that people don't always understand is so hard when they're trying to just compliment you and you're like, oh no, like this is really hard for me to hear that you think I look good today.
It's a
Like,
delicate
please
balance though,
don't.
because you kind of need that validation is also a good thing.
It can
It's
be
like,
motivating.
yeah,
but
you're putting in the work and like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, people do notice that it's like, paying off.
And I think health too, if nothing else, like eating better, it's just good for your health. Like I don't know, I just feel like there's a zillion, billion, trillion studies on, food and weight and health. And so if nothing else, do we not deserve to be feeling as healthy or as healthy as we can? And the impact of your food choices on your health, that's again the body taking the hit for the mind. Give it a break, help it out. And, we deserve that.
Yeah, I'm 29, so like that is part of, that's another thing. It's like, if I just do the right things now,
Yeah.
when I'm 60, like I'll be in a lot better spot than if I
Yeah.
just say like, oh, well, who cares? Like I can have a cookie, That is the other thing. Like I live in Queens, and it's just like, I don't keep, because if I have it in the house, I'm going to eat it, any kind of snack. If I have it, I'm going to eat it, guaranteed. And so I don't keep anything in the house. But then like living in Queens, like all that means is I have to walk to the end of the block to the corner store where they have, an ice cream freezer and chips and candy. Like, it's so accessible. So even like not having it in the house is like, oh my gosh, this can be so easily like thwarted. All I have to do is walk right there.
Like access. You know about food deserts?
Yeah. I mean, I went to college in Oneonta, like, if you like, there are certain towns that like don't have grocery stores, and you have to drive an hour and a half to get to like any like real grocery store,
Or places like this is kind of like there's no walkable grocery store here. There's just the corner stores or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, some parts of Brooklyn like that too.
But like, yeah, it does make your life harder, but then it also makes temptation less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And well, I don't know, these days the delivery, Instacart or whatever.
But
Oh yeah, Instagram
right.
makes it way easy. Or GoPuff.
Yeah. You just see the ad, you see ads all over the place for these services. Grubhub, like Grubhub ads are so prevalent around me.
And that's so aggravating. Like, they publish all these studies about, the obesity, and they kind of made me feel like it was my own fault, or my bad decisions, or my lack of willpower, or my bad character.
Yeah, right.
And
You're
It's the whole system you live in.
yeah. What about chances? Like, those are the same people. The people, I don't know, those people, whoever they are, right? Doing that, they're also the same. That structure, that system that we live in, the culture we live in, are also just bombarding us, making it so hard not to maintain a good, healthy weight. And I just feel so bad. People like they're already outlawed, like they outlawed, or they didn't outlaw, but at least disclaimers on tobacco and alcohol, and they try, and there's no regulation on just. You could just eat any kind of crap.
Right. The government shouldn't allow Nabisco to make a cookie dough Oreo. That's irresponsible.
But what were you saying in other countries like?
Yeah, right. What other countries consider like
acceptable?
Yeah, acceptable in foods is like much more
Very different
strict
from
than what it is in
America,
the US. Like I work with a lot of like Europeans and stuff, and they'll always say like it's crazy what you guys like allow in your foods. Like your foods are crazy here. Like I would never, touch it. And it's like
so we're fighting really like
it's
a
all
battle. Like
yeah.
It is with the whole society that you're in. Yeah.
There's credit for any gains.
Yeah, but it's just every day, right? There is a possibility to succeed at it or to feel okay. And I think that's something that you have to experience to know is true, but it's true.
Yeah.
Like from experience, it's true
Yeah.
that you can be okay and feel okay in your body.
Yep.
Which is an amazing realization.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, we've been talking for a while, so I wonder if you have any like final thoughts maybe before we then go and get, I think we'll do lunch next, right? Speaking of fun.
Lettuce wraps. I don't have any grand final thoughts. Like you said, yeah, you can do it. Right, an object at rest stays at rest. You need to generate some kind of force to get it going, and that force to get it going is like greater than the force necessary to keep it going. So the beginning is definitely the hardest part, but if you can take anything away from this, it's that there are tremendous benefits, self-realization and how you feel, and it is really hard. So like appreciate the wins, and like, damn, this is getting too long. But when you don't do something like this, I don't know, for me, it's like I don't have any wins to celebrate. So instead you just turn to like getting the dopamine rush from food or whatever. Yeah. But when you actually like wins, huh? Make that jump, as my mom was saying, throw your hat over the fence, then you give yourself an opportunity to get a few of those wins, and like that's really terrific and unmatched, honestly. So
it becomes a foundation.
Yeah,
and I think just willingness, just a willingness to face whatever you're feeling on the obstacles, whether it's a resistance, whether it's your thought process, whether it's time, just a willingness to take care of yourself, some self-care. And that's the most important thing that we're here to do. I think that's I want to go to the other side saying at least try to do take care of myself. You gave me this life, and while I didn't struggled a lot and made a lot of not so great decisions, I'm striving to be willing to be my best self and live my best life. And that involves, taking best care of myself in whatever way that I'm capable of, how many spoons I have for myself that day to use them for taking care of myself, which I'm happy I'm prioritizing more and more. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for giving us this time to chat about it.
Yeah, this has been really cool and helpful for me too. I'm loving it. I hope we can do it again.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, in 2 years we'll give the maintenance.
Yeah, we'll see where the maintenance update is.
Yes, indeed.
That's great.
For sure, it'll be good.
It'll be great. Mm-hmm. Well, look at that. Look where we ended.
I just said.
Where did we end?
11:11.
11:11. All right.
Same thing. That's so funny.
Perfect.